The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Sunday, February 15th. I hope everybody's had a fantastic Valentine's Day weekend, and you ready to get back to politics. We talked about love, romantic love yesterday. Hopefully you enjoyed that show. If you haven't had a chance to listen, it's on YouTube. It's on your podcast. Should be on your podcast app. So take a listen. Hopefully you enjoyed that. All right, let's jump in. Before we do that, let me remind you of my seminar in London, February 28th. Central London from 1 to 5, and then dinner after that. We'll be talking about capitalism. It's titled In Defense of Profit, Why Prosperity Need No Permission. You can find information about it on my website, yaronbrookshow.com. I think it'll be fun. I think you'll learn a lot about capitalism. We'll learn a lot of details, a lot of the history. We'll talk about the moral case, but really we'll talk about the history and what makes capitalism, what makes it unique, what makes it special, why we don't live in capitalism today. I mean, some of it you know, I think some of it you won't know. It'll just be a deep dive into the topic for 4 hours. Feel free to join and ask questions. So if you have any questions about capitalism, any thoughts, any doubts, any places where you feel a little unsure about capitalism, this is a great opportunity to ask and to inquire and to dig deeper. Again, live in person in London, somewhere in central London. It'll be on February 28th, yaronbrookshow.com. Just scroll down to where the event section are, click on the link for this particular event. It'll take you to an Eventbrite page where you can register and buy a ticket. So do that. The sooner that you do it, the better for me, at least, because that way I know how many people are coming, and I can plan, and I can get us an appropriate room, appropriate facility, so that, and then I can let you know about where it's going to be exactly. February 28th is a Saturday. Yeah. All right, let's jump in. So you probably all heard of the shoe horse theory of politics. There's been a lot of talk of it over the last few years. The idea basically is, look, when you actually look at the right and the left, at their extremes, at the far right and the far left, when you look at the far right and the far left, what you see, at least in terms of outcome, what you see in terms of technique, in terms of their strategies, political strategies, what you see is something very, very similar. I mean, both seem to be striving towards authoritarianism, some form of one-party rule or one-party dominance. Both at the very extreme, if you look at communism and fascism or Nazism, at that level, both have a secret police that monitors everything you say and do. They both repress speech. They're anti-First Amendment. They both have a tendency towards the cult of personality, where it was Lenin or Stalin or Hitler or Mussolini. There's a cult of personality associated with it. There's state control in both. The state is all-powerful. And there's repression of the opposition, and violent repression of the opposition. So this is like a shoe horse, right? So the two edges are like similar in terms of political strategies. And what's kind of at the other side of the shoe horse is what they'll call liberal democracy, right? Liberal democracy is here. The further you move to the right, the more and to the right or to the left, the more you become authoritarian, the more you become repressive, the more inclined you are towards violence. And this is a theory associated with a French philosopher from wrote in the 1970s, Jean-Pierre Faye, F-A-Y-E, Faye, I don't know how you pronounce it in French. Jean-Pierre Faye, and he argued that totalitarian movements from left and right basically mirrored each other in their political strategies more than traditional linear model. Linear model would be left-right on a continuum, and left and right at their far edges are completely the opposite of one another. The horseshoe bends, and they appear to be, on certain dimensions, very, very similar to one another. Again, the idea here is to recognize that there are ideological differences, they claim, but their strategies are the same, right? They reject liberal democracy. They both justify violence in the name of some kind of utopia, some kind of ideal. They both distrust institutions, promote ideological conformity, and they both claim, absolutism, political absolutism. And that means, ultimately authoritarianism. So, that's kind of the theory. And when you look at it, it kind of makes sense. Yeah, it seems like these things are true, right? Faye came to this, Faye maybe, came to this after studying Nazi Germany and Soviet Union's joint invasion of Poland. So I'm reading from an article about him. Although these regimes were ideologically different, we'll get to that in a little bit, their escalations towards authoritarianism followed a similar pattern. In both cases, the leaders of the regime sought to stifle political dissent, eliminate threats to their continued power, and upon observing the similarities in the strategies employed by each regime, Faye began to reconsider his understanding of the ideological spectrum. Faye deduced that, like a horseshoe, the left and right extremes of the continuum bend towards one another as their distance from the center here being some kind of liberal democracy, increases. Right? Now, critics of the horseshoe theory say, yeah, but the problem is that when applied to fundamental values, this is from this article, and beliefs associated with each ideological extreme, horseshoe theory loses its perceived validity. Right? So the theory behind the left and the right are different, they say. They're completely different. There's no similarity to it. This is how this article describes the difference, which is, it just shows you how ignorant and stupid. This is from the Vanderbilt Political Review. So this is from Vanderbilt University. Just shows you how stupid people are. The theoretical priorities of the left and right inherently oppose one another. Egalitarian economics and progressive policies, that's the left, cannot exist alongside laissez-faire economics and conservative policies. And here what you see is how damaging the left and right spectrum is to, I think, people's understanding of politics, to their understanding of the ideology behind. In what world is Nazi Germany laissez-faire economics? Any just basic understanding of what was going on in Nazi Germany in terms of economics knows that Nazi Germany was a completely controlled economy. And it was a statist economy. And the essence of fascism is state control of the economy. There is pseudo-private property, but there's certainly nothing, even approaching laissez-faire. There's really no recognition of private property. Everything ultimately is the state's, and the states let you pretend that you have private property, but it controls it. Tells you what you can and cannot do with it. So the whole problem with the left and right ideology is it lumps together on the right fascism, Nazism, and laissez-faire capitalism. And that's a disaster for us, the advocates for laissez-faire capitalism. This is why we must not be on the right. We are not of the right. We're not on the right. Now, I think when Ayn Rand thought of the right, she thought of the right as individual rights and capitalism. That is the right. And there was some hope for that definition of right, maybe in the 60s and 70s, but I think she was wrong. I think that she knew that the conservatives of the time who pretended to be pro-individual rights weren't really, and that view of the right was bound to go away, to disappear, to be gone, and therefore what's left then on the right is fascism, Nazism, and all those forms of statism. We cannot associate with that. So we cannot be on the right. And yes, we cannot be on the left. That's why the left-right is not appropriate for us. I'll get to my alternative to the horseshoe theory. It's called I call it the arrow theory, the arrow theory of political alignment. We'll talk about it in a minute. So, so the horseshoe theory is criticized by saying, look, the differences ideologically are significant. Now, I think the horseshoe advocates like Faye would say, well, look, yeah, it's true. They're different, right? We're not suggesting that ideologically they're the same, but we're suggesting that the ideology, whatever it is, drives them to the same type of political strategies, to the same type of authoritarianism. But again, they're completely missing the mark. So here's a continuation in this article. An alternative application of horseshoe theory encourages not the examination of the content of particular policy preferences, but instead the strategies used in the implementation. So this is about the strategy, not the content. But here's what they're missing. They're missing the deep, fundamental, metaphysical, really, similarity between the left and the right, certainly at these extremes, that ideologically they are fundamentally similar. They apply this differently, so there are differences ideologically, but the differences are far smaller than what conventional political thinkers think, because they don't think in fundamentals. So let's put that aside for a minute and let's look at what makes the left the left. What is the characteristic of the left? What is the underlying philosophy of the modern far left? What makes a leftist a leftist? What are they striving towards? What is the modern left about? And I think the thing that characterizes the left more than anything else is egalitarianism. It's the striving towards equality of outcome for all. And they've taken this beyond just a Marxist equality of outcome, a Marxist equality of outcome vis-a-vis economics, to a equality of outcome across all human outcomes. They want real equality. We all be the same. There's a scene in a movie that's made about Pol Pot's killing fields. I forget the name of the movie. It's a movie made by Angelina Jolie. Maybe one of you will remind me of the name. Anyway, there's a scene in it that over the loudspeakers, as they're in these work camps that are trying to bring the city dwellers down to the level of the farmers and drive out any education they might have, drive out anything that might make them extraordinary. There's a whole thing on the loudspeakers constantly going, the individual is nothing, the individual is meaningless, the individual means nothing. There's no, you are just one in this amorphous collective. You're all the same in every respect. And of course, the Khmer Rouge were famous in killing people because of their education, killing people because they had glasses, killing people because they were good in any kind of field. Yes, thank you, Miroslav, who seems to always have the answers to my questions. The movie's called First They Killed My Father. First They Killed My Father. I recommend the movie. It is horrific, but it's very powerful. It's very well made. Good for Angelina Jolie for making it. It's a difficult movie to make. It's rare that communism or egalitarianism, that the far left is criticized in our movie making. And Angelina Jolie, good for her for making this. It's a good movie. It's well made. It's powerful, and I think it captures. It could have been more explicit. The pieces of it that could have been a little bit more explicit, but I think it basically captures the horror, certainly, but it captures the ideology of the Khmer Rouge, and how evil it is, and how horrific it is to human beings. This is an ideology for ants, ideology maybe for bees, but certainly not an ideology for human beings. So the far left wants equality of outcome. They want equality for everybody. And to do that, they look at the past and they say some groups have been discriminated against relative to others. Some groups have power. Some groups have more economically, more culturally, more politically. They need to be brought down, while the groups that have less economically, culturally, politically, and in every other dimension need to be brought up so that we can achieve an equality. But it's much easier to bring people down, as the Khmer Rouge discovered, as Pol Pot figured out pretty easily. It's much easier to bring people down than to bring people up. It's much easier to destroy than to create. And once you establish egalitarianism, once you establish equality, there is no bringing up. Bringing up, creating, building, producing, that is a characteristic of the individual, not the group, not the collective in any kind of way. So it's impossible to really bring it up. So what the extreme left advocates for is identity politics organized around oppressor-oppressed power, quote, relationships. But the power relationships are just power. Just you can fill in economic inequality, cultural, any kind of inequality can fit into the power. Power is an amorphous term that they can use in any way they want. But the basic idea is you identify groups that are oppressed. They now are the good guys. They're the ones you want to support. Any group that has more than these oppressed groups have, they're the ones you want to destroy. They're the ones you want to bring down, kill, destroy, murder, annihilate, as the Khmer Rouge did. And that ultimately, the outcome needs to be equality, egalitarianism, everybody being the same. And to do that, many, many people have to die. Many, many people have to die. There's just no way there's no way to achieve that goal. Stalin understood that. Lenin understood that. You have to break some eggs to build an omelet. And certainly And suddenly Pol Pot understood that. But look, do the Antifa guys understand this? Absolutely, they understand it. When they get political power, that is what they will do. That is what they will do, right? They will use whatever power they have to destroy the people that they believe need to be destroyed. They will crush those who stand out in any kind of way, who don't buy into this egalitarian, mythical utopia. I love this. We've got our egalitarian on board, and he writes, immoral people must be controlled. Ooh. You see the authoritarianism there? You see how unapologetic, consistent it is. That is the far left. The far left is authoritarian. It is dictatorial. It is about secret police. It is about speech codes. It is about cancel culture in the sense of canceling, not just firing somebody, but canceling people, getting rid of them. They're non-existent. Again, I refer you to the Khmer Rouge or Stalin for examples of that. So fundamentally, the far left are collectivists. Collectivists who like to believe that they view all of mankind as one collective, where with all of mankind, those collectives all of mankind being that one collective, being ultimately equal. But in order to get there, in order to get to the point where all of mankind is one collective Borg, one collective equal in everything, in order to get there, well, we have to treat other smaller collectives differently so that we can equate them. So the Jews need to be treated differently than, the blacks or any other kind of minority. Jews don't count as a minority. Or, the whites need to be treated differently than people of brown skin. So they're very much about race, very much about racial ideology, about identity politics. The rich are a category that needs to be treated differently than the poor. The rich need to be brought down to the level of the poor because that's the only way everybody can be the same. So while the egalitarians view everybody as ultimately in their ideal equal, they have to differentiate between groups, between collectives, in order to get there, in order to achieve that utopia. Again, utopia is a collectivistic, anti-individualistic, complete rejection of the individual. The individual doesn't exist. And the elevation of the grand collective over everything else. And again, in order to achieve that, we need to treat different collectives differently in order to get to that end. So that's the left. That's the evil of the left. What characterizes the evil of the far right? So you could say the real fundamental difference between the left and the right is the left are egalitarians, and the right believe in hierarchy. They believe in inequality. They reject egalitarianism. They believe some groups of people are better, deserve more power, deserve more rights, deserve to rule over others. That some are better morally, some are better intellectually, some are better, and therefore they must rule the others. They believe in the same kind of identity politics. But their identity politics, the right's identity politics, is not for the purpose of some egalitarian utopia. Their identity politics is, they will tell you, just a reflection of reality, just a recognition of the fact that they are different and therefore deserve different things. So whites are different than blacks, different than Jews, different than Hispanics, different than Asians, and rich are different than the bourgeois, different than the poor. And that all these categories are, just like the left believes, that they're somewhat inherent. They can be molded and shifted, but they're mostly inherent. I mean, Marx believed that the bourgeois are the bourgeois. It's very difficult to change a bourgeois into a proletarian. Indeed, that's why communism has to engage in significant breaking of eggs in order to create that omelet. The omelet is pure equality, but some people can never be equal and can never, become proletarian and accept that consciousness, and therefore they must be exterminated. The right believes very similar that these groups are, and that the solution to that is not to strive to want some kind of equality in the future, but that some groups rule over other groups, that some groups control and have power over other groups, and that power should be recognized in the law, in the system of government. That is what Nazism does to the Aryan race over all other races, and it places Jews right at the bottom there. So there's a hierarchy, and you have different, you're going to be treated differently. And then some groups are so offensive, just like with the left. Some groups are so offensive it can never change. Their identity is encoded in their genes. Then those groups need to be wiped out, just like the far left believes. So the difference is, one is committed to egalitarianism as an ideal in a utopia, and identity politics as a means to getting there. The other believes in hierarchy as its utopia, the rule of some over others as a utopia, and identity politics is the way it will always be and the way that's always been. They will say, we are realists. We are connected to reality. You know, they call themselves race realists. We know some people are better than others, so we give those people power over the people who are not so good. And that being better is not just about intelligence, it's about morality, it's about culture, it's about economic ability, it's about everything. So one is for hierarchy, and one is for egalitarianism. Both, what do they both share? What they both share fundamentally is what did I do there? I did that wrong. Okay. They both share the fact that they're both collectivist, which is the fundamental. They interpret collectivism differently in terms of which groups are which, and they strive for different utopia. One is a utopia of hierarchy, the other is a utopia of equality. But they both share the same means, and they both share the same fundamental metaphysical view of man. The metaphysical view of man is that man, qua individual, does not exist. The man, by his very nature, is part of a collective. And that collective is the political but moral purpose of life. There is no individual consciousness. There's only group consciousness. There is no individual morality. There's only group morality. The purpose of the individual is to serve the collective. All right, I'm just going to say this. Kendo, if you don't stop on the chat, like dominating the chat the way you are, I will ban you from the chat. I put you on 24 hours yesterday. This time I'll just ban you completely. So either moderate your usage of the chat with your nonsense, or I'm just going to ban you from the chat. So that's the alternative you have. But if you continue in the path, you know what will happen. All right, back to this. I'm just trying to do some cleanup operations here. And Miroslav there is well positioned to ban you when I ask him to do so. Yeah, some of you might have Kando already blocked, so you might not be seeing his endless chats. So fundamentally, you could view the horseshoe theory as, in a sense, correct. We'll get to its real flaw. In that both edges and everything leading up to the edge, the whole project of the right and the whole project of the left are collectivistic projects. The right, even in its more moderate forms, is built on tradition. Tradition is inherently collectivistic. Whose tradition? Our tradition. Who's our? What about the individual who's going to break out of that tradition? What about the individual who wants to live his own life the way he sees fit, separate from your tradition? So even away from the edges, the right is inherently collectivistic. The whole conservative project, in spite of their claiming to be founding fathers and individual rights and the Declaration of Independence and all that, by the very nature of the word conservatism, what are they trying to conserve? A certain, way of life, but of whom? Not of an individual. The very nature of their emphasis on tradition and the very inclination they have towards nationalism. They're collectivists of one form or another. And then if you take the left, the same thing is true. The social democrats, the various types of, leftists, all share. Maybe they don't want complete equality. They want some equality. They don't want complete redistribution of wealth. They don't want to penalize. They don't literally penalize everybody. They just want to penalize some and a little bit, not a lot, and all of this. But everything is in the context of this group versus that group and how the group's going to end up and how the group's in this way or in that way. They're all collectivists. They all talk about the rich and the poor at the very minimal on the left. On the right, they all talk about us and them, the other, the immigrants, and the foreigners. And, as you get more and more towards the racist elements, the Jews, the non-whites, whatever, right? But it's fundamentally the same. They're both focused on identity politics at the extreme, but as you move in, the identity gets fuzzy, but the collectivism at the heart of it are still there. And there's nobody on the whole horseshoe who actually has an understanding of individual rights, of freedom, of liberty, and what it actually means. It doesn't converge into freedom, liberty, individual rights. That's not a spectrum. There's collectivism here, a little bit less collectivism over here, but it's still collectivism. And this is the problem with left and right, Democrats, Republicans, is, we don't get a systemic, fundamental, continuous move, no matter who gets elected, towards individualism, towards individual rights, towards freedom, towards liberty. That move just doesn't happen politically because we're stuck in a context of collectivism. We have to take care of the poor. We have to take care of the old. We bought into, one way or the other, the collectivistic premises that both left and right share. The individual, his liberty, his freedom doesn't matter, doesn't count. And that's everybody. Even the best people on the horseshoe are not there. So what we need is something else. What we need is a different vision of what that political spectrum looks like. So if you have to have an image, think of an arrow. Think an arrow. At the tip of the arrow is individualism. Individualism. That's the head. That's the, what do you call that? The bit at the tip of the arrow, which is the sharp bit. That's individualism. And you're moving away from individualism by various levels. But once you, at some point, you're dominated by collectivism. And at that point, there are these feathers, right, that branch off of the arrow. Right? The arrowhead is individualism. The other side, where you've got feathers, the arrow, there's just one tip. That is liberty. That is the Declaration of Independence. That is individual rights. Laissez-faire capitalism. Laissez-faire capitalism is the tip of the arrow. At the other side, you've got feathers. You've got the branching out like this, right? One branch is fascism. One branch is socialism. There's communism. There's Nazism. They're all collectivists. They just have different spins on it. One's the Khmer Rouge, who disagreed with Stalin, who did it a little different than Mao, but they're all basically the same. And then that's on the left side of the feathers. On the right side, the feathers are, Mussolini and Stalin and Franco, right? Franco didn't kill as many people as either Mussolini as Hitler. Still a bad guy, still fascist, still collectivist. Individualism, collectivism. And once you recognize the evil of collectivism, once you recognize that the inherent evil of collectivism is its negation of the individual, is that it's going against reality, it's going against nature, it's going against the nature of man, that it rejects reason, rationality, because reason and rationality can only be a feature of the individual. That inherently, collectivism must be mystical in some respect. A secular mysticism, a belief in the consciousness of the proletarian, or the consciousness of all blacks, or the consciousness of all whites, or the consciousness of all Jews, which the right often shares. We saw that in the video the other day of white identity, the guy about white identity. What is it? You can't define it, because there is no such thing. There is no such thing as white identity, any more than there is such a thing as black identity. It's mystical. It's completely floating. It's completely detached from the real world. And so the collectivists have to be mystical, because they reject reality. They reject reason, because they've rejected the individual. And as you reject collectivism, you embrace individual, then you understand that if you are for the individual, if the individual is the unit that matters in politics, then the only thing the individual needs politically is to be free. It's to be free of violence, to be free of coercion, to be free of force, to be free of authority that can impose its will. The individual needs to be left alone. And then, that leads you to kind of a system that protects individual rights, and the mechanism by which those rights are protected, the creation of a government whose sole responsibility is the protection of rights. In other words, it leads you to laissez-faire capitalism. But that's not on the right, because laissez-faire capitalism rejects everything associated with the right. Rejects tradition, rejects conserving the past. It's progressive, it's future-oriented, but more importantly, it rejects any collective. It rejects any form of mysticism. It's based on recognizing the individual and the individual's means by which he survives. He thrives. He flourishes. He achieves his own mind. So the horseshoe theory is both shallow because it does not recognize, it's shallow because it does not recognize the ideological similarities, the fundamental ideological similarities between left and right, and focuses instead on the strategic political similarities, which are all true, but they come from the ideological similarities. And what the horseshoe theory evades is the true alternative. The true alternative being individualism. The true alternative being individual rights. The true alternative being laissez-faire capitalism. Laissez-faire capitalism, not a feature of right, not the feature, not within the horseshoe, but away from the horseshoe, far away from the horseshoe. Because a complete paradigm shift, a complete change, a completely different orientation that rejects the very nature of left and right because it rejects collectivism in any form. In any form. And indeed, Milei is away from the left and right. I mean, he's mixed. He's not in laissez-faire capitalism over here. He's somewhere along the shaft of the arrow. He's not at the edge. He's not at the spearhead, not at the arrowhead, but he's along the lines. He has to periodically appease those on the political right because they're his allies. Now, I think it's appeasement. Maybe he believes it. Maybe in his own mind he has to do it. So he puts restrictions on immigration. He makes nationalistic comments. He claims he wants the Falkland Islands back and things like that. And he buys weapon systems in order to achieve it. But in his economics and most of his policies, he is on the premise of individualism and therefore at least on the shaft of the arrow. Again, not on the arrowhead. There's no politician anywhere in the world who actually sits on the head of that arrow, on the tip of that arrow. I wish. Milei is inspiring enough, but given the alternatives, but we can all wish for something even better. For something even better. So, yeah, that is my view of the horseshoe political theory. Horseshoe political theory. It doesn't recognize the similarity, the fundamental similarity, and it doesn't recognize what the alternative really is. We do. And that's why, well, I do. I don't want to speak for you guys. I do. Therefore, I am not of the right, and I'm not of the left. I pox in both their houses. They're both evil, as far as I'm concerned. They're both authoritarian, ultimately. And they both lead us towards the same collectivistic hell. And therefore, I stand on the side of individualism, even if I stand alone, even if no politician represents my view, even if I have no political home, no political party, that doesn't change my view of what is true. It is shocking to see so many people in the name of belonging somewhere on the political map, in the name of, I have to choose, there are only two alternatives, have sold their soul to the collectivists. Sold their soul to the collectivists. I will not. That I can guarantee you. Even if I land up being the lone man fighting out there against the evil of collectivism. And I know I'm not alone, so I don't want to pretend. I'm not alone. There are plenty of you out there who are with me, and I appreciate that. And I thank you for that. Not that you're doing it for me. I still thank you for it because it's a value to me that I'm not alone. All right. That is that. I know you guys have a bunch of questions, all kinds of questions, I guess. Some on yesterday's topic of love, some on today's topic, some of other topics. AI girlfriends. Okay, interesting. We'll get to those soon. Before we get to that, I promised to do some reviews today, so we'll start doing some song reviews today. I'll do all the song reviews, Shazbot, and then we'll get to Shazbot's Star Trek reviews. And then ultimately there's a book review I have to do as well. That'll take a little longer because I still haven't started reading that book. That'll take a while for me to read. But we'll start with the song reviews today, and hopefully I'll finish the song reviews up next week. And then in the weeks following that, I'm traveling, but sometime in the weeks following that, we'll start with the reviews from the TV series reviews, Andor and Star Trek, and then maybe there'll be new ones by the time we get to finish them all. So let's start today with some song reviews. Let me just close this window and move this in there. All right. So let's start with by far the most entertaining of the songs I was asked to review, and that is, and I'm sure I'm not pronouncing this right. Carll's song "She Left Me for Jesus." I was worried about this song, but it is really funny. It is. You guys need to listen to this song. It is really fun and funny. It's a country song. You know, the music is country cliche. It's just simple, straightforward, country sound. The words, the lyrics are straight out country, simple language, simple story being told. But it's super funny, right? So he describes his girlfriend they've been dating from high school and everything, and then she says, "She left me for Jesus, and that just ain't fair. She says that he's perfect. How could I compare? She says I should find him, and I'll know peace at last. If I ever find Jesus, I'm kicking his ass." She showed me a picture. All I could do was stare at that freak in his sandals and his long, pretty hair. They must think that I'm stupid or I just don't have a clue. I'll bet he's a commie, or even worse yet, a Jew. I mean, that's good. She let me do the chorus again. She's given up whiskey and taking up wine. While she prays for his troubles, she forgot about mine. I'm gonna get even. I can't handle the shame. Why, last time we made love, she even called out his name. That's good. Jeez, yeah, that's good. It says it could have been Carlos or even Billy or Ted. But if I ever find Jesus, he's going to wish he was dead. Amen. So, it ain't great art. It ain't great poetry. It ain't great music at all. At all, right? But it's funny. So, and it reminded me of my favorite country song. God, I had it on the tip of my tongue. My favorite country song is Jesus Take the Wheel, which is funny in its own way, but that's a serious song that makes you laugh and cry at the same time. But is where Jesus is taken seriously. It's not my favorite country song. Don't worry. But Jesus Take the Wheel is a classic. If you haven't heard Jesus Take the Wheel, you've got to listen to it. It'll really piss you off. But it's perfect. It's perfectly Christian. It's perfect, right? Is it Carrie Underwood? Yeah, it's so religiously evil. It has to be one of the more evil songs ever. It's a better song, croissant, than She Left Me for Jesus. But She Left Me for Jesus is one of the funniest songs I've heard. So kudos to Patrick, who got me to review this song, and for finding a song that I actually laughed aloud at. That is pretty rare. I have a pretty simple sense of humor, so that was good. All right. This one is from Ian. Ian asked me to review The Night Watch. The Night Watch. And I was really curious about this because it's a song based on a famous painting by Rembrandt. And I thought I would show you the painting. Maybe, I don't know. Should I show you the painting? One second. Let me see if I can pull this up and show you the painting. Yeah, let's see if we get a good. Problem with it is, I don't think you're going to gain a real appreciation for it. But let's pull it up, all right? It's one of the great paintings in Western history. There it is, but you're only seeing a segment of it. Let me try to rescale this. I mean, you can't appreciate it here, which is why I wasn't sure if I was going to show it. Let me make it a little smaller. There we go. All right, that's basically the painting. There's a lot more of height to it, which you cannot see. But that's the painting. And this is a song by King Crimson from the late 1990s, 1997. And it's basically a celebration of this painting. And I mean, this is a painting that revolutionizes art. If you look, so this is the Night Watch. The Night Watch, in a sense, was a guild. Whoops, what happened there? That wasn't supposed to happen. There we go. All right, there we go. No, come on, move. Right there, lock it into there. Okay. The Night Watch is a revolutionary painting that really revolutionizes at least Dutch painting, but I think more broadly revolutionizes the art of painting. If you looked at paintings of guilds before this, like groups of men that are responsible for a certain, what do you call it, activity, a productive activity, they're always static, all standing there, very, very, serious and very demure. But, and very, there's usually kind of a standard way of how you portray them, kind of a pyramid format, and how they're dressed and how they're structured. And this is the first time that a guild like this was painted in action. Engaged in activity with expressions, not just flat, but real expressions and individuated. Real individuals engage in their activities and dress differently. They're not all dressed the same. They're dressed in different colors. And there's even, of course, a little girl back there dressed in white. It's a magnificent painting. And one of the funny things I thought in the song, in the lyrics, was as part of the lyrics it says, let me see where, so this is the first verse. Shine, shine, the light of good work shine. So here, one of the effective things that Rembrandt does here is the way he uses light, the way he is lighting up the faces, particularly of the central figures, But really, if you look across the entire scene, the faces are lit. That way you can get their expressions. So there's an impressive, which is true of all Rembrandt's work, an impressive use of light in order to sharpen their individual characteristics. No, that's not what I want to do. All right, I don't know why it keeps resizing. So you can see it there. You can even see the girl in the background, the light on her, the light on the ground. You can even see shadows. I mean, the use of light here is really effective. Anyway, he says, shine, shine, the light of good work shine. The watch before the city gates depicted in their prime. That golden light, all grimy now, 300 years have passed. The worthy captain and his squad of troopers stand fast. Now, what's interesting is that golden light, all grimy now, and I get it, the sense in which he means grimy, because if you went to see that painting, this painting, in 1997, it was all grimy. It was all faded. The light was grimy. But they've cleaned it recently. So when you go now to the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, one of the great museums in the world, and I think it's on the second floor, this is a major painting that you'll see. It's right there. As you come up the stairs, I think you turn right and it's right there. The difference between what it was like when it was grimy, as the song represents, and the way it is now, it's such a huge difference. It is. I wonder what they'd write now. They'd have to change the lyrics today because the light is not grimy at all. It's come alive. They've done such a good job in cleaning it up it's almost a different painting now. So it really shines. It really shines. Shine the light of good work. So anyway, if you look at this song by King Crimson, I really like the lyrics. The lyrics are about basically these regular people who are out here committed to the defense of their city. He writes, the artist knew their faces well, the husbands of his lady's friends, his creditors and counsellors, in armored bright, the merchantmen, official moments of the guild, in poses keen from bygone days, city fathers frozen there upon the canvas, dark with age. Again, it's not dark with age anymore. It's kind of cool that now we can see it the way I think Rembrandt meant it to be seen. But yeah, these are the counsellors and the moneylenders and the merchants and the people of the town, the blacksmiths and so on. These are the people who engaged in the city's defense. He goes on, the smell of paint, a flask of wine, and turn those faces all to me. The blunderbuss and halbert shaft and Dutch respectability. They make their entrance one by one, defenders of that way of life. The red brick home, the bourgeoisie, and guitar lessons for the wife. And so many years we suffered here, our country raked with Spanish wars. These are the wars that Holland faced with the Spanish. Now comes a chance to find ourselves. Quiet reigns behind our doors. We think about posterity again. So the pride of little men, the burghers good and true, still living through the painter's hand, request you all to understand. I love that. So the pride of little men, I mean, he means not men of stature. These are not generals. These are not political leaders. These are the heroes of Amsterdam. These are the heroes of Holland. These are the people who actually do the fighting, and these are the people who organize the defense. This was the guild that defended them at night. This is the night watch. That defends the property rights, that defends the prosperity. We think about posterity again. So I think the lyrics are good. The sentiment is good. I didn't particularly like the music. There's a certain drama to it, but I found it a little annoying. It didn't live up to the grandeur of, I think, even the lyrics, never mind the painting. it just misses the music itself. I don't know, grinds a little bit. I wouldn't listen to the song. I like the lyrics, but I wouldn't listen to it because I don't like the way it was sung. And I found the music a little grating. It did create a sense of drama, but what it didn't create is the sense of light. And maybe that's the grimy. But it didn't create the sense of heroism that I think is in the painting. Ian says it's part improv, and Crimson definitely leans into dissonance. Yeah, there's too much dissonance for my taste. You know, this painting deserves a melody. It deserves good melody and harmony. It deserves a story told through music, and I think it's very hard to tell a story through music with that kind of music. So I didn't particularly like the singer's voice, but you've asked me to review these songs, so you get them. All right, that was The Night Watchman. I highly recommend checking out the painting at the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. If you're ever there, Amsterdam's a great city. You should definitely be there. It does not deserve an Iron Maiden song. God, you guys have the weirdest taste in music. What can I say? Or maybe I should say, just don't have a taste in music. I'm not meaning to insult anybody. You guys have your taste in music. I have mine. I think mine's better, but that's just me. All right, third song. That was Ian. The third song is by Hamad. This one is Starlifter, Fearless Part 2. And God, this one's an 18-minute song. I'm not even sure that you could call it a song at 18 minutes. So it's 18 minutes, and not sure why you're taking it as a compliment. Probably is, but you can take it as one. So this is 18 minutes long. It's very much a kind of a heavy kind of rock beat to it. It's trying to tell a story. It's got an arc. I didn't like it. And it's dark and depressing. It's setting it up to be heroic conflict, and the hero's gonna go out there and save the world. And it ends with, it's impossible. We alone, come on, the Starlifters. You will not win this war. These are the bad guys, I take it. The stellar engine cannot be destroyed. This is the end for you, fearless. We control the stars and all the fates of our worlds. Event horizon, point of no return, black hole, machine messiah, 1100, sail into the point of no return. So it's pretty dark. Most of the song, the singer is yelling. I mean, he's angry. He's yelling. And the beat is constant, and it's a war thunder. It's a war song. It's a thumping beat to battle, but then they lose, I guess. So. Not my kind of music, there's no beauty here. There's nothing for me to return to this. Unless I guess I'm going in a battle and think I'm going to lose. But then I think there are better songs for this, or better ones for me. Let me remind you, I'm no expert on music, no expert on song, no expert on songs at all, no expert on the history of music in America and heavy rock or whatever. I'm just giving you my personal opinions, which, if you call them subjective, I think subjective. They're not grounded in real, in an objective knowledge other than the knowledge of my preferences. So there's no evaluation here of the aesthetic quality of this heavy metal or heavy rock or whatever you want to call it song. It's just would I listen to this? Would I put this in the repertoire of songs that I listen to regularly? Absolutely not. Too depressing, too dark, too repetitive, too long, too shrieky. The voice is way too shrieky. Now, when he's defeated, it comes way down, and it's soft and it's mellow. But even then, it's not particularly an interesting voice, I don't find. Who's Rick? Oh, Rick, Jennifer. Oh, happy birthday, Rick. It's Jennifer's husband's birthday, so happy birthday, Rick. So that's Crown Land's Starlifter Fearless Part 2. I don't know if any of you know the song, but again, Hamad, thank you for the support. Thank you for having me reviewed it. Like most of the songs you guys have me review, I don't really like it. So, there you go. It is what it is. All right, two last ones. So first, Scorpions' "Wind of Change." So this is a song I like. It's very melodic. It's very easy, and it's got a great theme. It's depressing once you remember when this was written and what were the context. But this is a song basically about the winds of change, the wind of change in Eastern Europe, the winds of change in Russia. And it's melodic, it's pretty, it's interesting, it's got a positivity to it. It goes, I follow the Moskva down to the Gorky Park, listening to the wind, that's Moscow, right? Listening to the wind of change. An August summer night, soldiers passing by, listening to the wind of change. The world is closing in, and did you ever think that we could be so close, like brothers? The future's in the air. I can feel it everywhere, blowing with the wind of change. So the whole idea here is this is a song celebrating the change. This is, I think, it was written in the very late 80s, early 90s, before the breakup of the Soviet Union. And it became a big hit. It became kind of almost like an anthem of that period. And it's a good song. It's simple. The lyrics are simple. It's walking down the street and distant memories are buried in past forever. I follow the Moskva and down to Gorky Park, listening to the winds of change. Again, not super sophisticated, but it represents a time of great optimism, I think, in the Western world when the Soviet Union was collapsing. Tens of millions of people were liberated from slavery, liberated from communism, and it was very positive. They recently did this song at a live performance, I think in 2023 or late in 2022, and they changed some of the lyrics to turn it into kind of an anti-Putin, anti-war in Ukraine song, so a song supporting Ukraine. So at the time it was so good for them, but it was I guess the artists are German, Scorpions are German, so they were experiencing it, they were living it. Eastern Germany, the Berlin Wall had just fallen, and they wrote the song when they were visiting Moscow for a live concert as Russia was opening up. Right? It was published in 1990 on their album, so I think it was written before the Berlin Wall came down, but the album came out after the Berlin Wall came out. It was the biggest selling single, one of the biggest selling singles of all time, 14 million copies, and the biggest selling for any German artist, I guess, for any German pop singer. So, good song. I enjoyed it. I forgot about it. I remembered it from years ago, but I forgot about it. All right, one more. I did this one because it was easy. And this one is in Dave Goodman, recently. No, not Dave Goodman. This isn't the one from Dave Goodman. This is the one from Who gave me this time? I've got those. Let's change. Oh, there it is. This one's for Tony Biz. Tony Biz sent me this song, asked me to review this song. This is Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen's recent single called The Streets of Minnesota. So again, Tony, thank you for the support. And, what can you say about this song? I mean, this is a class, it'll become, put it this way, it's tailored after a classic 60s, God, the word I want is disappearing, right? Is not there, but this could be Bob Dylan in the 60s. It could be a number of different artists in the 60s commenting on what's going on in the streets, commenting on what's going on out there. And it's called The Streets of Minneapolis. And it's a comment on what has just happened in Minneapolis. And it's very... it very much sounds, it's got a Dylan, it's definitely got an early Dylan vibe to it in terms of the music. It's got the harmonica, it's got the guitar, the acoustic guitar. It's got, Bruce Springsteen's voice, which is in some ways he can make it very similar to a Dylan song. It's a statement song. It's there's another word that for some reason I had before is completely escaping me. But it's typical of that period of social unrest and and criticizing the powers to be in terms of what is going on. And this is obviously a song against ICE and against DHS and against Trump. Thank you, Publius. A protest song. How could I not get the word protest? All right. Anyway, it is a protest song. It's in a tradition of protest songs of the 1960s, and I think it's effective as that. I don't think this is a song that's going to go down in history like some of the 60s songs, because it's unoriginal in the sense that it is very much musically and aesthetically copying the style of the 1960s, copying the style of songs back there, copying style of songs that I think Springsteen has done in the past, and certainly Bob Dylan and others in the protest movement of the 1960s did back then. But for the moment, I think it's quite effective. This is a style of music I like. I grew up on Bob Dylan, and I like the music. I grew up on the protest music of the 1960s. I saw Joan Baez live in concert in Israel in the 1970s, and I enjoyed this. Now, Bruce Springsteen is a crazy leftist, as were most of, as Joan Baez and as were most of the protesters in the 1960s. That doesn't mean they can't produce decent music, and certainly this is decent. It's better than most things that are produced out there today, and it certainly hits home in terms of the actual content. It absolutely hits home. It makes the citizens, the protesters, it makes them heroic. It makes ICE the brutes, the thuggish brutes that they indeed are. It deals with the death of both good and God, what's his name? Pretty, and it ends with ICE out, ICE out, ICE out, and ICE is now leaving Minneapolis, which is good. So what I recommend, I actually suggest that you watch. What do you call it? That you watch the video, the music video of this. It's got the lyrics there, and it's got images. It works. It has a power to it. It resonates with my views about what is going on in Minneapolis. And yes, sometimes it happens that I agree with the leftists, just like sometimes I agree with the people on the right when they're criticizing the left. And in this case, he's absolutely right about ICE and about what happened in Minneapolis and about the evil of what's going on. And good for him for writing a song and turning it into kind of an aesthetic experience, the outrage. The outrage is an aesthetic experience, the outrage about what is happening. So I thought it was quite good. Again, he's it's the boss. He's talented. There's no question that he is indeed talented, and he knows how to write a protest song. There's no question about that. All right. So that is that. Those are my song reviews. I'll finish the song reviews hopefully next weekend, and then we'll go on to the TV show reviews. It's just easier for me to do it that way. Let's see, what else did I want to... Yeah, I did want to mention, I finished now Quent Cordair's part 1 of the Adultery 5-part series. I think it's 5. Linda can correct me. I think she's on. So I finished that the other day, and I'm not going to give away the ending. It's not easy, the ending. I'm not going to give it away. But I really enjoyed it. I really liked the writing. I mean, I could quibble here and there, but who wants to quibble? It's good. It's entertaining. It's enjoyable. It's moving. Most importantly, right? It's moving. It's describing a period in history that is really, really important, and a dark period, very dark period in human history that's important to understand. And I think it does a good job in conveying the sense of it. And I think it's in many regards true to history, even though it's not. I don't think it's based on any historical actual facts. But it's true to the history of that period. I like the writing a lot, and I definitely like the sentiment and the heroes, the villains, and the story. I'm still recovering from the ending, I guess. I don't know how long it takes. I was hoping for something different, but I shouldn't say more than that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading part 2. Although part 2 now is in a different time period, so we'll see how it all integrates and how the 5 parts come together and what holds it all together. So I'm interested in seeing all that. It seems like a very ambitious project, given this beginning and given the 5 parts. Part 2 is quite longer, so it'll take me a while before I get to it and finish it. I'm sure the ending is important for the full story, and there's a sense in which it has to end that way, and there's a sense in which you don't want it to. Anyway, and we'll see how. I assume these circles are going to close, so we'll get to that. I don't want to overly anticipate the way I think it'll go, but who knows? I can't write fiction, so I can't create worlds. But Quent has created a world here, and it's very impressive. So you check it out. It's on Amazon. I listened to it, but it's a short read. I've got the physical copy, so I'm gonna listen to the second one as well. It's easier for me to read now with listening, and enjoy it. Somebody said, somebody said the best lyrics about liberty are heavy metal songs. I don't think that's actually true. Now, it's true Rush has amazing lyrics, but most heavy metal songs ultimately are not about liberty. They're about anarchy. They're about, they're very good at describing dystopia and wanting to escape dystopia, right? Wanting to escape dystopia. But they're not good. I haven't seen any that are good, other than maybe Rush, at describing a positive. describing what liberty means, describing what individualism is. And of course, Rush, as Jennifer corrects, is not heavy metal. Again, not my field, so you guys can fight it out. But you know, I find heavy metal both in its music, in the music of the heavy metal, and in the lyrics to be fundamentally anarchist and fundamentally about shattering the existing order, not about building something better, not about building something beautiful. So, you know, going back to Pink Floyd, which certainly has a destroy the current order and kind of an anarchist element to it, certainly to, you know, The Wall. But Genesis, remember Genesis, not Quent's book, but Genesis the band. The lyrics but certainly the music are focused on dismantling, focused on destroying, focused on a kind of nihilism. And yes, kind of almost a Nietzschean nihilism, right? The individual rising above the destruction of you know. Yeah, Genesis was a good band. I liked much of the Genesis music, but yeah, but I wouldn't take any of them as really representing liberty. Now, you can prove me wrong by sponsoring a song review of a heavy metal song that celebrates real liberty and freedom. Real liberty and freedom. All right, let's see. Let's turn to the Super Chat. Let's turn to the Super Chat. We are well into our second hour, and we're about $100, $107 to be exact, short of kind of the contribution for the second hour. You know, on the Yaron Brook Show, we do about expect $250 of support for every hour of the show, and we'll probably go over. We might go into the third hour. We'll certainly finish up the second hour. So $500 is what we should be. We're just under $400. It would be great if you could, you guys, some of you could step up and get us to the $500 goal. I'm going to change the goal here. 500, so 107 short, and we'll follow that. All right, Silvanos, thank you for the sticker. So you can use stickers to get us there. It's easy. That way you don't have to ask a question. I know some of you don't want to ask questions, although it's a great way to shape the show. Barry, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate that. CP Milken, almost as always. Roland, thank you for the sticker. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. All right, so we are. We've got over 100 people watching. Just jump in with $1, $5, $10, $2, whatever you want. You can do a sticker. It's a way to support the show, value for value. This show could not exist without the support of you people out there who listen. So, and those of you who are not here live, please consider going to patreon.com, and becoming monthly supporters of the show. And then you don't have to worry about it, because monthly is it. All right. Let's see. How did we get to Phil Collins in the air tonight? It's moving. It is moving, and it's a very good song, I think, because it's building. It's a little bit like Ravel's Bolero. It is repetitive, but it's building to a crescendo, which has a really powerful impact musically, I think. So Phil Collins in the Air Tonight is indeed a powerful song. And, you know, we can speculate what it's about. I think it's pretty clear. All right, let's see. Liam, $100. Thank you, Liam. Really appreciate that. I forgot to ask you this yesterday, but is looking for the perfect partner a Platonic fantasy? Perfect can exist even in a loved one. There will always be something that annoys you about them. How do you tolerate or correct things you don't like in a romantic partner? So I don't know what that means, that perfect can exist, right? What is perfect? How do you define perfect? That nothing annoys you? Is that the definition of perfection? I don't think so. I think a perfect partner is the perfect partner is somebody that shares your fundamental values, that you find enjoyment, joy in spending time with, and living with, and experiencing life together, in bonding in that way, that you enjoy your fabulous sex, and you have good conversation, and you enjoy sharing the various experiences of life with. That's a perfect partner. What is it going to make them less perfect? That you don't like the way they laugh, they have a funny laugh? Well, the fact that it annoys you is probably your problem. So, stop being annoyed by it. Put it in the right perspective. Gain context. So, so I think that people create a Platonic ideal of perfection, which is not perfect in the real sense, but perfect in a Platonic sense, and therefore can be achieved. What's the point in a concept like perfect if you can't achieve it? I think perfection can be achieved. So, first of all, properly define what you think is perfect, as something in the scope of something that respects a hierarchy of values, and something that respects the way you feel about somebody, right? A lot of this is how you respond to them, And, how do you tolerate or correct things you don't like in a romantic partner? Well, it depends how serious it is. First, it's very difficult to correct people. And you have to be sure that the correction is worth the effort. And what does it mean to correct? I mean, you can debate, and if they have a wrong view about the world, you can argue for it. But how do you correct somebody else? The only way somebody else corrects himself is by them correcting themselves. You can't correct somebody. You can't change people. You can't fix people. Whatever happens, they have to do it themselves. But you have to be very, very clear about why you want them to change, in what way, and how important is it, and the significance of it, and are you sure it's them that are the problem, in a sense? People who enter a relationship with the idea of, I'm going to change my partner, it's not going to work. Now, you're going to change, and your partner will change. That happens over time. But if you're saying, yeah, I mean, I love her now, but well, wait, when I change her, she's going to be amazing. Not a good idea, and it won't work. And then you'll be disappointed, and then and it can't work because people they're not moldable. They're not clay. So figure out why you love somebody, and embrace them, and grow together, and then learn to the things you don't like about them. Learn to, or hopefully they're not significant. Hold then to not allow them to impact you. I try to understand why you don't like them and how important it is. But I think a lot of people do wait for, I don't know, something perfect and something better and better and better. And not that I think you should settle, but I don't think you should be platonic about it. And I think you should listen to the extent that you have self-esteem, and that you have emotions aligned with your rational values, listen, people say, listen to your heart. Listen to your emotions. They're telling you something about how you're responding. Try to understand what you're responding. Try to project what life with this person would be like. Maybe live with them for a while and see. Don't sit around waiting for Dagny. She might not like you. I don't know. But she might not exist. So find the best person out there that you love. You have to love them. You have to have the emotion. And then evaluate, after experiencing some, whether this is a person you want to spend a lengthy segment of your time with. But don't let the little stuff bug you. Don't let, focus on the essence. Focus on what it is that you're responding to. Why are you responding in this way? Why do you love her? Right. If it's a major conflict of values, then yeah, you might have to give her up and go searching elsewhere. But make sure that it's indeed that. Make sure it's indeed that. So definitely a risk there of creating a Platonic ideal and then never finding anybody. And that's tragic. Molten splendor. A capitalist society doesn't guarantee that some people won't try to cheat, deceive, or defraud others. Some just do bad things while others want to complain and sue. You mentioned that society would be less litigious in a capitalist world. Why? Well, because you could only sue when it was justified. And you would bear some of the cost if you sued when it was not justified. So you could only sue the parties who were actually responsible for the harm. You could only sue if they were consciously responsible for the harm. So, for example, in the American tradition pre-1970s, if you sued somebody, you have to prove gross negligence. It wasn't just enough for them to be negligent or sloppy, or they had to consciously know. So I'll give you an example. Asbestos. Here's an example. So people worked in asbestos manufacturing plants, and they got cancer and they died. And it damaged their lungs, and it was terrible. But the reality is that when they worked there, the people who ran the factories didn't know that the asbestos was causing cancer. The workers didn't know it, and the factory owners didn't know it. And yet, later, sometimes decades later, the factory workers sued the manufacturers. And indeed, everybody sued the manufacturers. There were so many people suing asbestos companies that the whole industry had to create a victims fund. But those lawsuits should have been thrown out of the court. They did nothing wrong, the manufacturers. They didn't know. You can't sue somebody for something they didn't know. There's a million things like that. A million things like that, right? Where you're responsible for your own life, and you do something, I don't know, somebody takes a lawnmower and decides to use the lawnmower to cut his hedges. So he lifts it, cut his hedges, and in doing that, injures himself, cuts off his fingers or whatever. And then he sues the lawnmower company. And now lawnmowers, some of them have stickers on them saying, for mowing the lawn only, do not trim the hedges. You shouldn't be able to sue for something you did that is inherently stupid. All the warning labels that you see everywhere. Don't stick your finger in this. Don't stick your finger in the fan. It might get chopped off. Duh. If you stick your finger in the fan, you shouldn't be able to sue. So a legal system would be much more rigorous in throwing cases out, in not accepting lawsuits. Still, there would be lawsuits. You'd still have to sue the people who are negligent, or sometimes even gross negligent. You still have to sue people who built bad products and you were injured because the product was bad in ways that you didn't know, but they should have known. If the asbestos manufacturers, it turns out, knew that this caused cancer and didn't tell their workers, then yeah, they should be sued. But that's not the case. So, I mean, everything today in California has a cancer label on it, warning on it, because, as Enric points out, because nobody wants to be sued. But if I produce a product and sell it out, then you consume it, and I don't know it causes cancer, you can't sue me. You shouldn't be able to sue me. You can't today. You shouldn't be able to sue me. So real thought needs to be put into a legal theory. And look, this existed before like 1970, so it's existed in the United States in the past, which defines clearly and objectively what are legitimate lawsuits and what are illegitimate lawsuits. What is a true violation of rights and what isn't a violation of rights. Right? So that's the sense. It's not that lawsuits would still be a mechanism by which we hold people accountable for the bad stuff that they do. If you're polluting and you know it's causing people cancer, then you should be sued. But if you're polluting and you don't know, and that discovery is made afterwards, and when you discover it, you stop, why should you be penalized for what you did? Unless it's just a way of redistributing wealth from those who have it to those who are suffering right now. But suffering is not a legitimate claim against somebody else. Your suffering is not a legitimate claim against somebody else. Okay. All right. I mean, but it's a complex legal issue that has to be resolved. But there would be a lot, I mean, there were a lot less lawsuits in Europe. And it's not like Europe is more abusive of customers, of consumers. Now, they have a lot of regulations too, but there are a lot less lawsuits because the legal system is not used in Europe to redistribute wealth. In America, one of the primary ways in which we redistribute wealth to people who are suffering is through the legal system, rather than through the welfare system, or rather than laissez-faire capitalism that doesn't redistribute wealth at all, unless there's cause, unless there's reasons, unless there's blame. Right? All right. Liam. What did I do there? Yeah, Liam. Thoughts on future AI girlfriends or life partners who'll be able to buy that you can program to be perfect. Biologically human with chips in their head so they can adjust for personality and temperament. Well, I mean, this is the thing. If they're biologically human, then isn't putting a chip in their brain enslaving them? So, you know, if they're biologically human, then they have a consciousness. Then they can feel, they can emote, or more importantly, they can think. They're conscious. They can, experience reality. Experience reality. And integrate reality and think for themselves. And then by putting a chip in their brain and changing their personality and temperament, you are creating a slave. Now, if you just mean that they're still just computers, they're not conscious. They're faking, they're mimicking a personality, they're mimicking a temperament, and maybe certain anatomical parts are made in a way that's particularly pleasurable for sex. Then it'll be a great sex toy, but I don't think it can ever mimic a human experience. You can't actually. They'll never really respond to you in the same way a human being is. And they're not human. They're not conscious. They don't love you. They don't feel. It's all an act. it would be like, I don't know, women who fake orgasms, right? I mean, if you know that, it diminishes your pleasure in sex, right? Like, with me, right? So, you can have a robot that does your stuff with, and then, one of the things robots will make possible is they will take a lot of the drudgery out of our day-to-day lives. So, and that's true maybe more for women than men. Just like home appliances have taken much more out of the drudgery of women's life, and enhanced their life. So, Cordair says, I know the steak isn't real. Yeah, the steak isn't real, but it doesn't matter, because if it tastes exactly like a steak, that's all you care about. That is, it's one-dimensional. It has only one dimension. But when you care about how the person you're in love with responds to the things you do together, and they're not a person, and they're not really responding, and then there's no there, it's a big difference. It's a big difference. So, yeah, I can see that a lot of people will use AI girlfriends as a way to overcome loneliness, and I think, yeah, fine. I don't think a healthy human being with a healthy self-esteem would ever be satisfied with an AI girlfriend. But I think it might be a way. I mean, you could imagine AI therapists and AI friends who can help you get by, but not as a replacement for other human beings. Not as a permanent replacement for other human beings. A temporary, maybe. All right, Michael, the presidential election in 2024 may be 2020, the last free vote taken in the United States. Dictatorship only hold elections with predetermined outcome, or do not hold them at all. Trump is no exception. Yeah, the question is, can he get away with it? And I think the answer right now is no. He couldn't get away with ICE being in Minneapolis. That got people out in the streets. You think stealing an election would not get people really out into the streets in a much more substantial and significant way? And even some Republicans into the streets, even some old-line conservatives into the streets, people who still believe in America on the right. I mean, the Trump authoritarians, the Trumpists who want authoritarianism, who want to steal elections, not just pretend to make the election fairer because Trump demands it, but actually want to steal elections, I think is a small number, is a minority. I mean, here's the thing. When Kristallnacht happened in Germany, there were no demonstrations by Germans. Nobody opposed it. Nobody went out into the streets to stop the SS from, breaking windows and doing the horrors that they did. So we're not there yet, guys. We're just not there yet. So I expect 2026 to be an election. I expect the Republicans to try to play games in different places. I expect those games not to work. And ultimately, the real winners, whoever they happen to be, probably Democrats, taking over the House. I think that's going to happen. And Trump will try to intensify his opposition to fair elections going into 2028. But, I think there'll be resistance. I still think a majority of Americans do not want this. Not your average algorithm. With Rand out there inspiring so many entrepreneurs, I don't think we can go backwards. Well, we are going backwards. Every day we're going backwards in many respects. So, look, a lot of those inspired entrepreneurs are becoming, crony semi-fascists. So, I don't know. If it doesn't go deep, it might not actually be meaningful in the long run, how much she inspires them. But we'll see. Harper Campbell, in what way is our intellectual climate different or better than 1920s Germany? In what way is it similar? Well, 1920s Germany. I mean, it's similar in the fact that there's a significant element of nihilism both on the left and the right. It's similar in terms of the frantic nature of government trying to figure out how to please people. We don't have hyperinflation. They had hyperinflation. You had to take a wheelbarrow to buy a loaf of bread, a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread. Money became so worthless, it was cheaper than wallpaper, so people used it to wallpaper their homes. We're not in hyperinflation. We don't have communists marching in the streets for communism on a regular basis. We don't have Nazis or fascists marching in the street. I mean, we have these ridiculous stormtroopers, but we have people demonstrating against them. So we have the nihilism on left and right. We have the mixed economy, and we have bad philosophy dominating. I mean, that's the thing that's most common. We have bad philosophy, Kantian influenced philosophy dominating both left and right. That is all the common. But there are also significant differences in that it's not the case that a significant proportion of the population supports one or the other. It's not the case that they're given free rein in our streets yet. I mean, we do have elements of it. We have the pro-Hamas people out there in some places around the country, but not in most. In some places around the country, particularly campuses. There's a significant opposition to them. There's a lot of people who don't like them. They're very unpopular. And then we have, I don't know, the neo-Nazis marching in Charlottesville, but they were very unpopular. People really didn't like them. But ideas drive history. The ideas are the same in fundamental terms, collectivism, mysticism. But it takes a while for those ideas to actually manifest in a political system. And we're still, I think, pretty far from manifesting in the kind of political system Germany landed up with. All right, remind you, we're about $82 short. 82, that's very doable. 116 people watching, $82, value for value, a trade. And if you ask a question, a way to shape the show. So consider doing a sticker, $2, $5, $10. It wouldn't take many people at $10 to get us to 82. Take 8 people. Andrew, Rand was asked if art would exist in an objectivist society. But of course, she said. The question explained, but what might be is. But even in an ideal society, man would need to experience concrete value achievements. Absolutely. And there's always more. There's always greater achievements possible. There's a constant striving for perfection, striving for greatness, striving for better, striving for more. And art gives us an image of what to strive for, what is possible. And even when we're there, it concretizes what that looks like. The purpose of art is not to fix the world. The purpose of art is to inspire us by showing us in concrete terms our most important values. And the need for that is never diminished. Even when one achieves those values, we still want to see concrete. I mean, we're talking about philosophical values, metaphysical values. We still want to see concrete manifestations of them. There's not a limit to beauty. You want beautiful things around you. And there's an endless number of things that can become beautiful, can be made beautiful. Why would you stop? I'm surprised she was, Linda, Thank you, Yaron. Your listeners can preview or purchase Genesis Part 1 of Adultery on the Big A website. Can't post a link. I can be reached via Quent Cordair Fine Art for signed copies. All right, check it out. Adam, you certainly warned the true threat being the authoritarian right. I also find it very dangerous that they've co-opted so many things like capitalism, fiscal conservatism, and even the American flag. Well, I would say they've co-opted the American flag. I don't know if they've really co-opted capitalism. I think anybody should be able to see through the fact that they're not capitalist, right? The Trump administration taking equity stakes in companies and things like that. And they certainly are not fiscal conservatives. I mean, the debts are only increasing. The deficit is massive, and it's not shrinking in any significant way. Idolatry, not adultery. Idolatry. I thought I said idolatry, but maybe it came out differently. Sorry, Linda. Idolatry. Yeah, I think they've co-opted those things, but anybody with half a brain should be able to see that they don't stand for them. They don't really represent them. It's not part of their ideal. But sadly, many people don't have half a brain. But that's the problem with the right. The right is this package deal of laissez-faire capitalism and Nazism in the same concept. That's ridiculous. It doesn't work. Thank you, Adam. All right. Only $52 left now. We're chipping away at it. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Not your average algorithm. If Ayn Rand had never existed, would another Dark Ages be possible, probable? It's hard to tell, but I think things would be worse already. And, things would be declining. It's interesting that there was never really a Dark Ages if you have a global perspective. Europe sunk, but the East rose. The East sunk, and then Europe rose. And China was doing pretty well through most of that period, or parts of that period, independent of both the East being Middle East and or Central Asia and Europe. So it's not a global phenomenon. And maybe today it is because we're all so interconnected. But I definitely think a Dark Ages is possible, though very unlikely, with or without Ayn Rand. Certainly more likely without Ayn Rand than with her. James, to think is to refuse to surrender. Yes, that's a negative. It's to refuse to give up on reality. That's what to think means. Refusal to give up, to surrender your mind to somebody else, to surrender your mind to non-reality, to surrender your mind to the Borg, to the group, to the mystics of muscle or mystics of spirit. James, is Gen Z more demoralized than previous generations? That's why anti-Semitism is so prevalent in this demographic. I think they are more demoralized. I think that's why they have less babies and they get married less, and they're more prone to anti-Semitism, both of left and right. But that's because they've been taught from when they were very young, the world's going to come to an end. The left has been very good at that. They replaced the kind of millenarial Christians who every few years came up with another story about how the world will end. Well, now the left has replaced them by overpopulation and climate change and species extinction, and every few years there's something different but the story is the same. The world is going to end, and you did it. You caused it. And I think it's created a generation that's more pessimistic and more demoralized than past generations. And they lash out, and part of that lashing out is the fringe political stuff, including anti-Semitism. Roman, should sex on the street be legal again, as it was in the Middle Ages to some extent? God, no. I mean, if you owned a street, and I think you allowed sex on it, given it's private property, nobody would use it, right? Nobody wants to see somebody else having sex. I mean, a few people do, but mostly we're not interested in other people's sex, and we're not interested in other people seeing our sex. So there's no market advantage to doing that. And imagine streets are private. Nobody would do that. So no, I don't think having sex on the street should be legal. You should, the state owns the streets, but it should reflect the reality, in a sense, you should pretend it's a private owner, and would private owners allow it or not? And I don't think they would. So no. Privet Avenue, yeah, you'd have Privet Avenue and nobody would go there. And that would defeat the whole idea of having a private street. You have to think about what the function of a street is. It's if the shop's there, it's to go shopping. If the home's there, it's to go home. It's transportation. That's the function of a street. And therefore, you should allow what is consistent with that function and not allow what is inconsistent with it. Yeah, but again, on private property, you can disallow lots of different things. So it's not that in a laissez-faire capitalist world, there would be a law against sex in the street. Private owners would not allow sex in the street. And given that we don't have it, the government is just stepping in to enforce a kind of property law. That's all. So there are all kinds of things, all kinds of laws we need today that wouldn't exist in laissez-faire capitalism because the government wouldn't own stuff. But when they do own stuff, they need to have laws that regulate the stuff that they own. Clark, more than 50 conservative leaders signed a letter against Trump's drug pricing policy codification. Are the tides turning? They might be. 50 conservative leaders. The question is, how many of them were senators? How many of them were congressmen? Like, you can probably find 50 conservative leaders who will sign anything against Trump on some issue. How many of them are in position of power within the Republican Party today? That's what I'd want to know. So I don't know. I mean, House and Senate just passed a repudiation of a rejection of Trump's tariffs on Canada. He will veto it, but they did pass it, which went against his will. But only a few Republicans switched. It wasn't like overwhelming. If it was overwhelming, it would be veto-proof, which it should be. So I wouldn't make much of 50 conservative leaders. If it was 50 senators, whoa, that would be meaningful. 50 senators and congressmen, even that would be meaningful. But just 50 conservatives, there are probably 50 conservative never-Trumpers who would sign something like that. Linda says, Quent just penned an amazing poem celebrating individualism. I emailed it to you. It's called Don't Tell Me. Thank you. I appreciate it. I look forward to reading it. Cook, you said this is an ideology for ants. In the third Ant-Man movie, Hank Pym says socialism is a charged word, but maybe we can learn from these ants. I really liked Hank Pym until that moment. Yeah, I could see why you wouldn't like him. But I haven't seen the Ant-Man movies, so I have no comment about liking Hank before this. But that is a pretty horrific statement, right? We can learn from the ants. No, we can't. There's nothing to learn from ants. There's nothing about ants that is similar to human beings, except their life. Stephen, what do you mean when what do we mean when objectivists say that actions don't cause actions, but only entities can be causes? We mean that what causes the billiard ball to roll in a particular direction when hit is not the ball that hit it, but the nature of the ball that rolls, the nature of the ball that's being hit. Its nature is such, its shape, its response to force, the way its nature, provides for it to respond to force, that what causes it to roll when hit is its shape and its all these, and the material it's made from, and all of its own features, that it's in its own nature. So causation is not a chain of actions. Causation is the nature of the thing, which dictates that it would act in a certain way when interacted with. In a certain way. Mike. Great topic. If I remember correctly, my high school social science class in Canada let us believe that laissez-faire capitalism is on the far right. Yes, I think most people hold that. I think in most political science classes, that's probably what's taught. Exit, thank you for the sticker. It's $2, but it helps. Enric, thank you for the sticker. $5. It all helps. Chipping away. We're now down to $39. We're almost there. So close. Only got about 5 minutes to go. And we're ready in our third hour. Stephen, what do you think of Brett Kavanaugh? Were you disturbed by his confirmation hearings? What about SNL's sketch? You know he rarely dissents. I mean, I'm not impressed by Brett Kavanaugh. He doesn't strike me as particularly intelligent. He's not, there are a few people on the court that I might disagree with, but they all are impressive, particularly Gorsuch. Even, what's her name, Barrett, who I was very negative on, and has turned out to be, at the very least, an interesting judge and worth reading. Kavanaugh seems like just a guy who goes along. He doesn't seem like he has a judicial philosophy. He doesn't seem like he's committed to much. He's a middle-of-the-roader who kind of just goes along. So not that impressed. Because of the confirmation hearings, I don't remember exactly. I mean, there was the sexual stuff. I thought that was ridiculous for a number of reasons. It's something he did, I think, in high school. And he was being persecuted for it as an adult. I just think that's ridiculous. I mean, even if he had done what was said he had done, let's accept that. How long are you do you need to be held accountable for something you did 30 years ago? I'm sure there are lots of things I did in high school I'd be embarrassed by today. Should that disqualify me if since then my behavior's been impeccable? I find this idea of 0-1, you're in college, in college. You do something in your youth and it wipes you out. I think that is wrong. That is wrong. Yeah, I mean, if you kill somebody, sure. If you commit a violent, crime, then you go to jail. But in this case, it was wrong what he did, and he should have been punished when he did it. And but to hold him accountable decades later, I don't think is right. Oi, ever played a video game? I'm replaying Assassin's Creed 2, which takes place in Renaissance Italy, and it is truly beautiful visually, musically, and decent story, and you get to hang out with Da Vinci and test his inventions. No, I've never played those kind of video games. I played video games in the very, very early days of video games, when they were pretty primitive and dull. I mean, in the 1970s, not even the 80s. The original Commodore and Atari. So no. Yeah, I believe it. I completely get it. And good. It sounds like fun. It sounds like there's a real aesthetic experience in addition to the challenge of the game. And yeah, it's great. But I never got to experience it. And I'm not really interested. It's too time-consuming and absorbing. Too many things going on. Too many stuff to do. Stephen, do children of the undocumented enjoy birthright citizenship? Yes, they do. If they're born here, not if they weren't born here. What do you do with the historical argument made by the government in Trump versus Barbara? I don't know. You're citing legal cases. I don't know these legal cases. Right? Oh, the birthright citizenship. Well, how about we talk about that when the Supreme Court decides the case? I think the issue, I think they're wrong. They're reading the 14th Amendment wrong. I think it does not exclude people who are non-legally in the country. But we'll see how the Supreme Court rules on it. I think the Trump administration is misinterpreting it purposefully. There are some conservative scholars who agree with the Trump administration, but even most conservatives think the Constitution is pretty clear. And if you're born in America, no matter by whom, no matter who your parents are, no matter their legal status, you are a citizen. I think that is the generally accepted interpretation of what is in the Constitution. Roland says, we loved the wind of change in the 1990s, Hungary, the country. It's sad that it didn't work out for Russia, but sure am glad their troops left Eastern Europe. So for me, it's still a song of liberation. Yes, absolutely. And it's sad that Orban took over Hungary to replace them, but there's a chance he'll be kicked out, and the rest of Eastern Europe is doing phenomenally well. Without the communist boot on their neck. Lone dissenter, I'm skeptical of self-published books. Would a book of genuine value not find and benefit from a traditional publisher? Does a traditional publisher make for a better book? Interested in your thoughts. I'm not sure that is the case. That is, it's better to find a traditional publisher. They provide you with some additional marketing, and it is a quality screen, at some level. But it's also very difficult to find a conventional publisher. It's very difficult to find an agent, and without an agent, you can't get a publisher. And, I've written books that were self-published. The book on finance, for example, that is much better than a lot of books that were published with publishers, and it's self-published. So I don't think you can generalize. Many authors just don't want to bother with finding an agent and then a publisher and then getting the rejection letters. And the technology today makes it so easy to self-publish, and why bother with all of that? So there are plenty of reasons why there might be a lot of real gems, really fantastic books out there that are self-published, and you shouldn't use it as your sole criteria. And I know a lot of published books by publishers that are just horror shows, just horrific. Think about who the people at the publishers are, and they tend to be, think about the fact that Fountainhead, a masterpiece, the Fountainhead, was rejected by 12 publishers. Think how many not masterpieces, but good books have been rejected by publishers. Roman says, if the terms of service differ between private streets, how should customers be informed about the change? I don't know. They'd figure it out. Signs, text messages when you enter the streets, automatic text messages when you enter the street. I don't know, but it could very well be that all of that is too much of a hassle, and the terms of service would be standardized because it's too much of a hassle. So, the market would sort it out in creative ways that most of us cannot imagine. Moonrock, do you like James Lindsay? If you do like him, have you considered having a conversation with him? I'd be happy to have a conversation with him, just not on my show. We disagree on too many things. I don't like interviewing people I disagree with. I'd love to be on his show. I'd love to be on some neutral show and have a conversation with him. There's things I like about James Lindsay and things I don't like about James Lindsay. We disagree on some stuff, but we agree on a lot of things. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy having a conversation with him about both the things we agree on and the things we disagree on. I just don't view my show as a show to do debates. I don't know how to do that, and respect the fact that I've invited somebody on my show and debate them. I find that a weird combination. But if a third party have invited the two of us to have a conversation, I would definitely do it. Happy to do it. All right, guys, $6 short. $6. Oh, there we go. Steven just did $5 question. Somebody do a $1 sticker and we can meet our goal. Steven, what was the name about the book that explains the major changes, making it easier to sue? It's called Liability. Liability by Peter Huber, Huber. There was a while where it was out of stock, but you could find it used, I think, on Amazon. It's called Liability by Peter Huber. It was written in the, 90s, I think. It's really, the first half of the book, brilliant. The second half, where he gives solutions, I don't completely agree with, but the first half was really, really brilliant. All right, Robert says, here's $20 just for me to soapbox. You know, I always say optimism is realism, but I understand only realism is realism. But compared to today's pessimism, objectivism should rightly lead to optimism and passion. Yeah, I mean, you have to understand optimism correctly. Optimism is not a Pollyannish view of the future. Optimism is an understanding that when people are rational and are left free, and to the extent that they are left free, good things happen. And there's still enough freedom and enough rational people for good things to happen. And there's still enough freedom for you to make good things happen in your life. And in that sense, the optimism is the realism. Thank you, Robert, for using me as a soapbox. And finally from Robert, and folks, if you haven't heard Yaron's Rules for Life episodes, make it so. And now you can purchase the first 5 episodes of the series as a commercial-free playlist. You can. I think through Patreon. I think it's through Patreon. Maybe through YouTube, but certainly through Patreon. All right. Thank you, guys. I will see you tomorrow. 2 shows tomorrow. We've got a news show, and then in the evening, I'm interviewing Augustina. Augustina about immigration and Milei. We'll talk about Milei. Augustina's just been to Argentina, and she's an expert on immigration. So it'll be a fantastic conversation. We'll talk about Argentina, Milei, the future, and then we'll shift to talking about America and immigration and why she still is so proud of the fact that she became an American citizen. So check it out. That's tomorrow, 7 p.m. East Coast time. But before that, there'll be a regular news show. See you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.